Good morning. I am Scotto Seidel, Terry Alumni Board Member and Terry Third Thursday Chair. I am filling in for Dean Ayers this morning, who is on his way to Albany, Georgia, to deliver the very last of his Economic Outlook series. So it is my pleasure to welcome you all to the Terry Executive Education Center for Terry Third Thursday. Thank you all for being here this morning. As you know, this is a monthly breakfast networking event, and it takes a lot of effort and time to organize these. So I'd like to thank my 9 fellow committee members and our sponsors, our corporate sponsor, Synovus, and our media sponsor, Public Broadcasting Atlanta, WABE. Let's give them a round of applause, please. So a few announcements. We've got an exciting lineup of speakers for the remainder of the first half of the year. On March 21st, next month, we have Jeff Small, who is co-founder and CEO of MDH Partners in the real estate field. And then on April 18th, we just got confirmation that Mayor Andre Dickens is going to join us. And he's going to bring along a few members of his team to talk about the city and some of the cool things they're doing. And then on May 16th, we have Alex Zigliara, who is, he was formerly with Cliff Bar. Now he is CEO of Mr. Beast Feastables. And I don't know if you've never heard of Mr. Beast, ask your teenagers, because Mr. Beast is a very big deal. And then on June 20th, we have Katie Kirkpatrick, who is CEO of the Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce. So this morning's talk, so that's a pretty good lineup. I hope you guys will join us for all of those. This morning's talk will be a fireside chat facilitated by Alumni Board Vice Chair Nick Dunkar. I'm going to ask Nick to please come up to the podium and introduce our very special speaker, Coach Jack Bauerle.
Good morning, everyone. Give me a second. It's a long list of accomplishments when we start out with Coach Jack. So I'm going to try to do it justice here, then we'll transition to a fireside chat. But it's my pleasure and honor to share some time up here on the stage with Coach Bauerle. Jack Bauerle served as the head coach of Georgia swimming and diving for 43 seasons, tied for the longest tenure of any head coach in the SEC. In his time overseeing Georgia's program, Bauerle won 7 natties. Just let that sink in for a second. 7. Kirby, eat your heart out. 12 SEC crowns with the Lady Bulldogs, while 63 different men and women won 176 national championships. That's pretty impressive. 309 Georgia student athletes accumulated 2,116 All-American citations, while good old Coach Jack himself was chosen SEC Coach of the Year 18 times, and won National Coach of the Year on 7 occasions. 595 career victories. Coach Bauerle is the second winningest coach in collegiate swim history, while also leading the Georgia women to an NCAA record 107, again, 107, just for those keeping track at home, consecutive dual home meets extending from 1995 to 2017. Again, if I'm doing the math, that's 22 years of not losing in your own pool. If that's not good enough, again, we're trying to compete with Mayor Dickens here later, but if that's not good enough, he coached Team USA at 6 consecutive Olympic Games, while the program produced 87 Olympians, representing 20 nations and earning 38 medals. All of this is not to be lost on the fact that in the classroom, his program featured 41 NCAA postgraduate scholars and 3 NCAA Women of the Year recipients. Almost had a 4th this year with Callie, right? So it's with that pleasure, I'm going to call up Coach, and we're going to show a quick video. Coach, come join me.
Few individuals have made an impact on their chosen field in the way Jack Bauerle has. For over 50 years, first as a student athlete and later as the Tom Cousins swimming and diving head coach, Bauerle was a fixture poolside here at the University of Georgia. His impact spread across the nation. Georgia student athletes became NCAA Women of the Year, All-Americans, and Academic All-Americans, and excelled in their post-scholastic careers. That influence went international as Bulldogs populated the coaching ranks and Olympic teams, culminating with Jack Bauerle coaching the United States in the last 6 Olympic Games. But ultimately, Jack is best known as a Bulldog, and the thousands of early mornings and late nights here on the deck in Athens are a part of his legacy. And it's only fitting that today we recognize and memorialize those incredible times.
So, Coach, thanks for joining. Can everybody hear? Yeah. Thanks for joining us this morning, Coach. A funny story, just last night, Coach and his lovely wife, Leanne, who's here, were going to dinner. And to show you how humble he is, I was walking up to meet him, to pick him up to go to dinner, and he was talking to some guy, and and I said, Coach, what's going on? He's like, this damn ring, and I'm like, what? And he had left one of his national championship rings in his car, in the cup holder of his car. And he asked the valet to go get the ring and bring it back. And he's like, I don't never wear these rings. And the guy's like, what's going on? Like, I don't understand. And Coach puts on his ring and he goes, look at this. And I jump in, like the PR guy, and I'm like, but he's got 7 of those things. But it shows you how humble Coach is. And I think I've had the pleasure over the last year plus to spend some time with Coach, call him a friend, a mentor, and very honored that you're here with us today.
Thanks, Nick.
But let's start off. I mean, you're a Philly guy.
Well, the best part about that video is that last championship when I was doing the can opener, that was at Tech's pool. Yeah. So we won our last one there. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, no, it's
wasn't lost on me. Yeah.
But take us back to your upbringing in Philadelphia. I mean, as a Cowboys fan, right? It's tough.
Surprising we talk.
Yeah. But I will say, we often go to games together. You're a hardcore, diehard Philly fan. Yeah. Talk about you as Jack the swimmer coming out of the high school pool and just why Georgia? What brought you to Georgia?
Well, I started swimming as a young kid, but I loved every other sport as much or more. And but before I start, I got to do a little shout out. Mm-hmm. I got a lot of former swimmers here. Guys, do you mind standing up if you swam at Georgia or dove? Come on, you can do it. Yeah. So, and Shannon's mom and dad were, your mother was first Navy class of women at the Naval Academy also. And Shannon herself was on a relay in 2013, and it was a very important relay. We won a national championship, and you found this, she never thought she was going to be in that spot, and you were. And you stood up and did a job. Yep, it's pretty cool.
Awesome.
Anyhow, Philly was, I just grew up, to answer your question, I'll try to be a little bit more succinct than I usually am at home, but I just was fortunate enough to have some really successful coaches, one of whom was one of the college, is in the college, not college, but American Swim Coaches Hall of Fame. And I just didn't even realize I was around good people, you know, when you're 10, 12, that kind of thing. And I think if I had not had a coach that was that entertaining and crazy, I probably would have gone into basketball, and that probably wouldn't have turned out quite as well. And but also, I enjoyed every sport. I enjoyed surfing and everything else growing up and down on the Jersey Shore. Believe it or not, I know what you're thinking. You've seen the show, but we were on an island where a little town where it had one blinking traffic light in 2 Mile Long Island, so it was a pretty cool place. But so anyhow, I sort of loved every sport growing up, and next thing I know, I had already taken trips to North Carolina, NC State. NC State illegally brought us in a couple times, but I came in there my junior year first for a trip all around Philadelphia, a lot of the schools, you know, Penn, Villanova, et cetera, LaSalle. I was getting ready to sign with Ohio State, and I just took one more trip, went to Georgia, and fell in love with every aspect about it. And I think it was mostly, to be quite frank, it came down just to the way I felt about the people. Mm-hmm. So I remember after Saturday morning, they let me call my home, and asked my mom and dad, and I said, this is really where I want to go. They said, well, we better come back and talk about it a little bit. And so I had already made a few different kinds of decisions at 18. So, but anyhow, it worked out.
No, Coach, that's great, and I did not know the Ohio State piece, so I'm glad clear has prevailed.
That was a neat thing. It was it was clearer than I thought. What happened there taught me a lesson, and it sort of changed my coaching career, because when I said no to that coach, you remember these days when you're on a landline, right? I went into the bathroom for privacy in our house, and I was sweating. And the hardest thing for an 18-year-old is to say no to an adult. And I said, he said, well, Jack, have you decided? I said, yes, sir, I'm going to the University of Georgia. And he said, I'm going to tell you something, son. Boom, everything changed immediately. He said, you just made the biggest mistake of your life. And well, I said, I remember saying, that might be, but that's where I'm going. And that's where it ended up. And one of my best friends went there too, and that was probably just as well that we weren't together, so probably we wouldn't have made it through, but it all worked out. But that was a real big lesson to learn when someone gave you a no and how to act, and because when we recruit, you hear no a heck of a lot more than you hear yes. So you have to, and if you like the kids, you send them on their way. And some of the greatest relationships I have to this day, kids that ended up on Olympic teams for other places, were fostered during recruiting. So that's the way it's supposed to be.
No, Coach, that's fantastic, and nothing brings, I think, this whole crowd more excitement than a big no to Ohio State.
Yeah, it was easy.
Because frankly, we wouldn't be here otherwise.
Yeah, I wanted to beat them forever. Yeah.
So you're at Georgia, early swimming years. You talked about best friends. I know you've shared this story with me about your connection to John Stafford and how that's all played out, and some guy named Matthew, right? I think we know maybe Matthew, but maybe share a little bit of that in the early days of your swimming career and John Stafford and how that all played out.
Well, John Stafford was an assistant coach, graduate assistant. He was getting his master's in PE. And he was my guys. Anybody that swims, you sometimes have a direct coach also. I was on a team, and he was in charge of me. We ended up being really close. After he left, after 2 years, he got his degree. I never swam that well again. He worked. I wasn't that talented, but he knew how to work me. And so when he left, I don't think they worked me hard enough. I had to do everything right. But he and I ended up as being really very close. As the years went, he ended up coaching for a while down at Florida State and also in Bowl School. And then he went into business, but we always remained in touch. I would not be sitting here in front of you unless it was for John. I took, as a freshman, this is never fairy tale stuff. Sometimes things do go wrong in careers. I took an ill-advised trip my freshman year and found myself in another state. And so I called John first instead of the head coach. And he said, well, Jack, you better get back here ASAP along with your buddy who was a junior. Thank God I went with a co-captain. And anyhow, we ended up, but John went to bat for me, and basically I ended up being on the team, and it all turned out pretty well. But I owe my existence to John. He doesn't really remember it quite like that. I do. I knew I was. So anyhow, Coach Rick Mark comes up and said, Jack, I hear you know John Stafford. And I said, yeah, sure. And he goes, well, his son's, I think this is when he was a freshman or a sophomore. He's a sophomore maybe. He said he's the best quarterback in the country now. I said, you mind getting in touch with him? So anyhow, that's how it all started. It's pretty fun. But and now John has gotten back to swimming, and he set a couple national records last year in the 75 to 79 age group, national records. He had a little health scare, and all of a sudden he got, and I sent him a couple G caps that he's sporting, and anyhow, he's doing great. But he and I asked him, this is something this is fun. I said, when did you know Matthew was pretty good? And he goes, well, in the 8th grade when he could throw it over 50 yards. I went, that's a pretty good sign. Yeah, so he was well on his way.
Thanks, Coach. I think that the theme here of relationships and lifelong relationships and connections back to the G and to Athens are a theme that we're going to come up with today and work through. But what's interesting among the many things in the accolades is when your career ended at Georgia as a swimmer, you almost instantly went into the coaching ranks. And as we think about that, the short period of time between when you hung up the cap to when you were leading the deck, talk about, what influenced you into coaching, why UGA? Did you have other offers? I mean, it's just it's a great story because you've been on the campus, in some capacity for 50 plus years helping UGA.
Well, Nick, it was accidental. And so I was just sitting there, and I was finishing my degree and in English, and the coach came to me and said, well, you're on a scholarship, so you need to do something. So I started coaching, and all of a sudden he put me in charge of an entire group because he really didn't feel like coaching that group. And so next thing you know, I started coaching. I had the distance group. These guys won't be surprised because they all think they were overworked. But anyhow, that's how it started. So I basically was, earning my scholarship that I had for a fifth year. So next thing, I fell in love with it, and I started coaching the young kids. I mean, at one time, my first team at Georgia in the '79 with the women, I was still coaching. They would leave, and I had 10 and unders coming in right after that. So it sort of cut my teeth pretty early. Ended up one thing led to another, and through the grace of God and a couple of, I left for about 3 or 4 months. My father told me to get up there and get a real job in Philadelphia. And then a couple of parents put a little package together that helped me be able to afford to live in Athens. And then it got better. I had a free place to live out in Watkinsville, the Ashford House, the most historic house in Oconee County. Dr. Ashford was a swim captain in 1939 with Coach McGill. One thing led to another, so I had free reign of the most beautiful house ever, and next thing you know, I started coaching. Yep.
It's an amazing story, and I'm often with Coach, and we're at a Phillies game or something, and he'll just go down this path, and then I'm like soaking up massive amounts of Georgia history. Your second son is named McGill,
yeah.
And I don't think that's by.
No, Coach McGill was one of those guys that for those that are pretty young and don't remember, but Coach McGill was considered the father of collegiate tennis at the University of Georgia, and he's the one that brought team tennis to its zenith, basically. But he and I played at least once every 2 weeks, and maybe sometimes once every week. And I think we discussed last night, I missed at least 30 staff meetings at the University of Georgia because Dan would call. He'd never call until the night before when he knew it was convenient for him. And he'd say, and I'd do his, if anyone knows Coach McGill, he said, Jack, I said, hey, Dan, how you doing? He says, we're playing tennis tomorrow at 8:30. I said, can you be there? And I said, yes, sir. He says, good, bye. and that was it. So it was always a short conversation. And then, so as I said last night, I had a lot of dental appointments there as an excuse. So, yeah.
Well, we are certainly glad your teeth are all in, and the tennis continues to improve. Talk with us a little bit. I mean, we got a lot of business leaders. We're fortunate to have a lot of business leaders in the room this morning. And 79, your first year as women's head coach, right? In Athens, at that point, and I'm not saying this, but just more of as an observation, it's a sleepy little town, right? And you've got to recruit, and you started recruiting. What were the selling points of Athens that you sort of talked about with the recruits? And then what did you look for in recruits? As we're all trying to recruit top talent, right? Yeah. You recruited the best of the best, right?
Yeah,
Talk a little bit about
we tried.
that.
At first, we couldn't. And we have a couple former here. Alan Joel, you're here. Alan remembers the old pool quite well. And so we tried. We actually, this is not a stretch. We signed at least 4 athletes that never saw the old pool on their recruiting trip. I was no way I was going to show them unless they asked. It was a dump, and it was built for World War II. For those, as a lot of people probably know, but and it looked like it was from World War I. It was a tough looking place. So, but the bottom line is, when I went recruiting, I just sort of had to find. To me, I asked the coach. I couldn't get the best kid, so I said, "Who's your hardest worker?" And that led us to some pretty darn good kids, because it's the kind of sport. It's a grind, and the kids that are here, young guys. Sorry, guys, still call you kids, but they sort of understood it's a grind, 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 and that's the way you can get good, and you don't have to be the most talented. So that sort of built upon it. And then as the University of Georgia became even better academically, it became much easier. And so then to be able to go in someone's house and sell the education and also sell the fact that we actually made it a priority within our program and honored those people that were excelled in the classroom as much or more than we did the swimmers that were all American. Good thing was a lot of the all Americans were pretty smart too, so that's what you wanted. You wanted the fast ones and the smart ones. But one of the greatest things and then that sort of built upon itself, so we were pretty much able to speak to anybody. And we started putting people on Olympic teams. First one, 96, Sheila Taormina, she gold medaled here in Atlanta. Then after that, we had more and then more and more until it just got to a pretty high pitch. We've had 40 Olympic medals to our credit. It says 38 here. No, you weren't wrong. It's 38 Georgia.
Okay.
But I coached, don't hold this against me, but our program was attractive to others after they finished where they were. So we had two others that came, and one gold medal, one silver medal. A young guy from Emory, breaststroker, Andrew Wilson, who was the engineering student of the year at Emory, and then he went to Oxford for his graduate degree, and got into MIT also. He only applied to 2 schools, but he came, swam with me for 2 years before Tokyo. And then this is the one you're not going to like, but there was a young lady that I missed recruiting who would have probably impacted us for another championship or 2. And then after she left there, she was unhappy. She quit swimming for 2 years, called me up, and she came to Athens, and she was a gator. And she swam with me for 2 years, and she's silver medaled. And these guys all know who she is. And that was it was a neat experience. So you're wondering how that worked. We had a pro group also. And so we had a group of about 8 to 9 athletes besides our college team. And then we were real successful at the Olympic Games. So success breeds success. But the bottom line is we went after character first.
Yeah, no, that's super impressive.
Yep.
And I think that the snowball effect of bringing that in. But let me take you back to 97. 97 was your first women's SEC championship. And what made that team so different? Because here you are, you're coaching along, you're getting wins, right? We're opening the new pool, you're getting talent. But 97 was sort of what I call the first year of like 2 decades of just dominance in the pool.
Well, perfect storm. And actually, our men's team had a great meet too. We had the conference meet of, we were the best team at the conference. Now, the good news was we were hosting it, the SEC championships at that time, and that is a gigantic motivator for the kids as they go through a season, particularly on a 5:45 on a morning during the week, and they just remind them you're going to be swimming in front of your home crowd. But we had a bunch of pretty darn good kids. And that, even though we just won the SEC championship, that was our first one. That opened up the gates because all of a sudden they thought they could win. Mm-hmm. We thought we could, but we swam better than the other teams. 2 teams should have beaten us, but you know what? When we were in 2016, when we won that championship against in Tech's pool, Cal Berkeley and Stanford. And do I love beating those teams? Absolutely. Because it's just nice to beat California teams, and because they always thought that's the Mecca, and but anyhow, it's sort of a neat thing. They just made up for a lot of points, and just by great swims across the board every time they got up, and hosting it is a gigantic motivator. And then we hosted it in '99, and we did it then too. And that was our first NCAA championship.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you are leading me in, but this is a perfect segue. So you're the OG when it comes to back-to-back-to-back, right? 99,
Yeah.
2000, 2001. First,
Yep.
did you ever call Kirby when he was trying to do it last year?
No, but I did before. Remember when we won in Indianapolis?
Yeah.
I told him that place was good to us. And he said, "Thanks, Coach. I hope it is." Anyhow, it worked out pretty well. Yeah, it's fun watching them. They put... It's a machine going on right now, as you well know. It's pretty exciting. And I grew up with Georgia football. That was one thing it's not in part of this. I fell in love with Georgia football. Back when I was a kid, you had to read about everything. It wasn't force-fed you. You didn't see anything on TV, but something about the G. Quick story on the G. This is amazing. So Coach Dooley, this is from Coach Dooley's mouth. And Coach, I'll never forget, he told me, I said, Coach, how do we get the G? And this is a representative of the Times. He said, well, when we came, they were in that they were in a bad spot. It was Johnny Griffin. We were just not winning games. That's when we went into the slump with Tech also. And so he thought we needed something. We had no insignia whatsoever. So he called Green Bay. They had someone in the office call Green Bay. They asked them, they said, listen, we're University of Georgia. Can we use your G? And someone in the office said, sure. and that's how it worked. So that's our Georgia G. And that's how things were so uncomplicated. But, Coach was...
no licensing rights, nothing, right? Yeah.
That's all way past now. So.
No, that's incredible. And so you won your back-to-back, and then in 2000, you get your first call from USA Swimming, right? 2000. Yeah. Talk with us about getting that call, what it meant to represent your country, and then we'll go into some other stuff because everybody here wants to hear about the Olympics and all the great stuff there. We're going to get there, I promise. But that first call from USA Swimming, how gratifying was that to say we have arrived as UGA swim program and look at
great.
Me.
That was one of the best moments, and it actually was not so much a call. We go to Olympic trials, and we were really fortunate. We put 5 kids on the team. If you put 2 or 3, you have a chance to be a coach. And put 5, they had to put me on, even though I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But so we put 5 kids on the team, and it all worked out. And after that was sort of had a snowball effect. And then people coming in, the kids that were coming in had a feeling if it came here, they could make an Olympic team also. And even if they didn't, they were part and parcel. A lot of the kids were next to Olympians, and they knew, and those Olympians helped make all the swimmers better because they compete every day. So.
Yeah, and that started. I mean, not that I'm counting, but almost 23 consecutive years of you being involved in some form or fashion on USA Swimming and walking out with the crowd and all the games and whatnot. And then in 2008, you're anointed women's head coach for all of the Olympics.
Yeah.
You talked about all the medals. We talked about all the preparation, but you then get to select in some form or fashion or help select or influence the other coaches that you want on the deck with you in all these different places, especially 2008. Share with us how you're going through that, what characteristics you're looking for. Because, I mean, again, for those of you weekend warriors, right, when you go to the trials, top 2 for each event get automatically or on the team, right, just based on the trials. And this year it's in Indianapolis again, right? But from a coaching perspective, you've got coaches that have different views, different philosophies. There's some California people on there, invariably with Meehan from Stanford and whatnot. But talk about how you...
Philadelphia.
Another Philadelphia. Well, we're going to get to another Philadelphia person here shortly.
Yeah.
But talk about how you organized that team and how you ran the 2008 women's team at the Olympics.
To me, it was no different than our own staff at the University of Georgia. So I just wanted to put people together that had the kids in mind first and had other kids in mind besides their own also. That was the biggest deal because you have to have that togetherness. When you go off in the Olympic Games, they make the team. You have to remember one thing. All those kids they spent the last 4 years trying to beat each other. They're the best in the world. We only pick 2. Usually those 2 are the top 5 in the entire world. So it's not like they have a love match going on for 4 years. They just want to beat each other. So we sort of bring them together and confine them for at least 3.5 weeks before the games themselves to bring them together. So you have to have things work well. So this might be how we can skip over maybe a question here, but I look for the same things in those coaches as I did when I hired people at the University of Georgia. And for me, it was the most important ingredient for any coach that I hired was loyalty first. If you had a sense that they would be loyal to you and the program in any situation, any cause, that trumped knowledge. That can come. Yeah, that can be taught, and that comes with experience. But the loyalty factor is gigantic, and I think, whether it's a company or whether it's a University of Georgia swim team or an athletic department, loyalty reigns supreme.
Now, Coach, that's extremely powerful. I'm going to change it up and throw you a curveball here. In the video that was produced earlier, we saw you with the late, great Kobe Bryant. You're sitting there at these Olympics. You've got the best of the best, the dream team. Everything's out there, right? And you can't name a swimmer. What Olympic athlete were you just starstruck by in your Olympic experience?
In the Olympic experience?
No swimmers. You can't name Phelps, no Ledecky, none of those
Well,
has-beens.
Nadal. Yeah. So he came up. This is pretty cool. I was with Michael Phelps. Because Michael couldn't go anywhere by himself, and we were even in the Olympic Village. So we always had. So I'm best friends with Michael's coach, Bob Bowman, who sent us his other two great swimmers that medaled here for the University of Georgia. So I was sitting there with Michael, and all of a sudden I see Nadal coming with his bodyguard also, and we also had a bodyguard with him. People didn't know it, but he was only about 10 yards away from us at all times. So Michael had to travel with a bodyguard at all the Olympics or World Championships. That bodyguard, by the way, was the one that saved President Ford from Squeaky Fromm when he took that in Sacramento when the assassination attempt. He was the one that grabbed the gun. So we had a pretty good guy working with us. I felt safe. But Nadal came up, and he knew he sensed I was in charge of Michael, and he came up to me and he said, "Sir, would you mind if I spoke?" And I went, "This is pretty cool," because I was a tennis nut, and so I said, "Absolutely." So they sat down, and it only lasted 5 minutes because all of a sudden, it was like a swarm of bees. About 400 athletes were there, and then we had to leave. But Nadal was in all his splendor, really, really mannerly, and I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. I'm glad you said Nadal and not Djokovic, because then we'd have a bigger issue. But
yeah, that's for sure.
No, so this is happening. You've got 23 years of just unbelievable Olympic experience. At the same time, you're winning more natties, right? We talked about the last one at the Tech Pool, which made me happy. I was just there with my daughter over the weekend. But everybody has favorites, and as a parent, you're going to say you don't have to. We do, okay? We do. Let's just get that level set. That I'm joking partially, maybe not.
Sure.
But of the 7 national championships, which one was your favorite?
The first and the last.
That's 2.
Yeah. Well, the first is the first, and that and it happened in our pool too. But the last one was probably the biggest upset ever. Because we were supposed to lose to Cal and Berkeley. It's a 3-day meet. We were supposed to lose by 1 day's worth of events, a full day. We were supposed to, if we swam, great. And this is objective because everyone puts the times into the computer. They say, okay, if everyone goes their best time, this is who wins. We were supposed to lose by 130, 140 points. We won by about 15. But that's over just 400 plus points, so we basically outswam everybody. That was our best meet, and we had a little story there. We had a young lady, these guys all know, Olivia Smoliga, who's made already 2 Olympic teams. She was a high school swimmer of the year out of Illinois, and the only reason we got her was a woman swimmer on my first team in '79 coached her at her high school. So that's how, because we wouldn't have had any inroad whatsoever. But it came down to the last relay over at Tech for us. We had to get a certain place, and she heard all the coaches talking. Then she heard even another coach from Cal Berkeley talking about it, and she came up to me and she said all she wanted to do is have it concrete what she needed to do. She was the swimmer of the meet, and so what do we have to do, Jack? She was getting really agitated. She goes, "What do we have to do to win?" That's all she cared about. And I said, it was a little more flowery, but I said, all you have to do is lead us off and do a pretty fast time. And she understood that directness. She's a Chicago Polish girl, and you just had to talk to her really directly. And so anyhow, she did that, and the rest of them just swam for their lives. We just wanted to lead, and then we put the fear of God in the next 3, and next thing you know, we won. So it's pretty cool. Coaching, you have to coach them all different. They're all different kids. Yep.
No, that's amazing. And speaking of the kids, you earlier talked about the importance of both being strong in the pool, which obviously you guys were, but also in the classroom.
Yep.
And you had 3 women NCAA, All-Americans that from a scholarship perspective,
Yep.
academic perspective, you and I have talked about this all the time, right? We talk about, frankly, as an employer, I like to hire athletes from college because they know the balance, right? But you've got top Olympic performers. You're recruiting them in. They're staying. They're getting their degrees. How did you do it?
Well, I mean, they did it. We sort of gave them a platform, but you have to have a good environment. You have to have good assistant coaches because as a head coach, you don't reach all of them. You have to have help, and a lot of the kids here had other coaches that were important to them also. I wasn't the only one. Believe me, I couldn't do that, and they had good relationships all around. It's a team deal, and but to have those type of kids is something we are really proud of at the University of Georgia. And there's no program schools don't have. We have SEC schools that have never had an NCAA Woman of the Year. We've had 3 from our swim program. So. And right now, with postgraduate scholarships, we had a young lady, Callie Dickinson, who's going to med school next year. That gives us 41 NCAA postgraduate scholarships. Usually to do that, you have to be All-American to have about a 3.8 or 3.9. We've had 41, and if we were a school, we'd be 7th, just from our swimming and diving program. There was one diver in there, guys, that got one, so I have to say swimming and diving. So, but, and as you know, and Laura Ryan. And so that's what we're really proud of, and that's sort of just built upon itself. So you can go into any home and just say, hey, this is what we do, this is what we prioritize, and if you do that, the parents trust you and all. When you go into a home, it's a really neat thing, and if you go into someone's house, you can really tell everything you need to know about the athlete, or you just watch them, like Basil, I watched you. Where are you, Baz? Okay, I watched you on deck or after meets with your parents, and I knew you're a principal at St. Pius, and so you find out as much as you can about them, but you can't ever find out as much as you can until you talk with their moms and dads, and then you watch how they respond to mothers and fathers, and if they respect their mother and father, they're going to respect you. It's pretty much cut and dry.
No, that's amazing, and we're going to shift slight gears here. You've got 7 natties. There's another Pennsylvania coach at University of Georgia that has 10. Suzanne Youngklin from our gymnastics.
She was from Jersey, actually. Yeah, but you know what? I always tell Suzanne and I, she's amazing, best college coach ever in history, gymnastics by far. But she wasn't an Olympic coach either.
Exactly. Exactly.
I don't believe we stick it to each other. She reminds me that she had 10. What the biggest achievement we had, I don't think it was the 7 national championships. It's the fact that over the years since the 80s, I guess, early 80s, we've had 49 top 10 teams. So to me, being pretty good all the time is, and I think it's probably the same in business, you're going to have great years, and just in some of that you control, some of it you can't. But in business, I think what you really like is to be really good all the time, and to be consistent, and that's I think that's the hardest thing. And I was just talking to Scott over here. You have a company that 117 years old. Correct. They're a family, and so obviously they've done something extremely well for a long time. And ups and downs. Yeah, oh yeah, you do. You have ups and downs for sure. But I think it's that's just to be good for a while is what we value as coaches. Yeah.
And speaking of value, it's interesting. If you look at all the coaches across all sports, Suzanne being one, obviously you, yourself, Coach Rick, Coach Donna, and all the coaches, right? However they exit the school, whether retiring or otherwise, they remain. I said otherwise. They remain in Athens, and there's a tight-knit bond between all the coaches there. Can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, you joke about playing tennis with various coaches and whatnot, but is there something about Athens that just keeps people there?
Yeah, Athens is pretty neat, and they all become accustomed to being there. They also, you know a lot of people outside of the athletic department, and for me, it's a lot of connections with faculty. a lot of friendships there, so it is a very difficult place to leave. Mark's still there. I saw him the other day. I just saw seeing Ray Goff tomorrow. I played tennis with Jim Donnan. Donnan, just so you know, won the number 3 singles at NC State while he was quarterbacking NC State. He went in tennis. He's not quite as nimble on his feet as he was when he was, but none of us are. But if you hit the ball to him, it's coming back. And so it's a neat place to be. And you know, the coaches, particularly the football coaches, they're revered still, and they have a good. It's a good feeling for them to be walking around Athens because people, whether it went perfectly or not at the end, people respect what they did for UGA. It's a great place to live.
No, Coach, that's and we'll come back to this, but the last question I promised, and then we're going to open it up to the crowd because last I checked, this is probably one of the largest crowds we've had, so it's all because of you. It's not because of me, obviously.
Because of my PR man.
Yeah. But on April 23rd, 2023, they held an event at Georgia. It was Jack's Night, and it was announced that the pool would be renamed, or named, I should say, the Jack Bauerle Pool. I was there just a couple of weeks ago at a swim meet, and it's just pretty powerful when you talk about walking around, right? And I always joke, we've been at the campus a couple of times, and I'm sort of like standing behind you because it's the Jack show, right? And having lived in LA, it's like being at an Oscar party with Brad Pitt, and everybody wants to talk to you, and then I'm back there. And when we were on the deck,
I've never been confused with Brad Pitt, but yeah, so. But thanks.
But it's just amazing the impact you have and continue to have on the program, on the school, the deck, everything at the pool. Talk a little bit about if there's one or two of the biggest accomplishments, like when you sit down and you say, listen, I was at Georgia, and this is, what are you most proud of at the university?
That's easy, actually. When Jerry asked me to do the commencement speech for UGA. That was the most important thing to me ever in a career because to me, well, I'll tell you what I said in the commencement speech. I still remember. First thing I said was, in the fall of 1970, I could not have been further from this podium. And that's the truth. It was not even, I was just worrying if I was going to graduate at that particular point in time. I did get a chance, and also for me, it was even more special because two of the most important people in my life, if not the most important, were two professors at the University of Georgia, an English professor and a comparative lit professor. And at the ceremony, at the graduation commencement speech, I was able to honor both of them. They came, and I had them stand up in front of about 18,000. And it was just really a good moment because sometimes you can never get a chance. Sometimes you just don't get a chance to thank someone properly. And because of them, I made it through Georgia, and they gave me a home. They brought me over to their house for dinners, and they just sort of guided me through academically, and without their help, I don't think I would have made it. And so that commencement speech meant more to me than anything else, and to me it was Jerry, a trust that Jerry had in me, and a lot of that was because Jerry and I became real close because we have now brought 10 Foundation Fellows from our swim team to the University of Georgia. And as these guys will attest to, we've had one or two that weren't our best swimmers. And matter of fact, it might have been our weakest swimmers. And but Jerry wanted them here too. So we recruited for the Foundation Fellow program because some of those great students wanted to swim, and they wanted to swim for 4 years. And so it's sort of a symbiotic relationship. And for that, we are extremely proud. That's a big deal because we're I view this, we're part of a much bigger picture than just the swimming part and diving.
And for those mere mortals like myself, Jerry is Jerry Moorhead, who's the president of the university. He drops it like it's nothing, but Jerry is Jerry Moorhead. Before we turn it over, I'm going to do a quick, and thank you for that, I should say, just a quick rapid-fire questions. And just tell me what first thing that comes to mind. And these are going to be fun, right? They're meant to liven up the crowd. You guys have gotten too comfortable over there. As a Philly native, from a cheesesteak perspective, Pat's or Geno's?
Neither one.
Wow. Okay.
You see that on the Monday Night Football stuff all the time. Neither one. D'Alessandro's and Roxborough by far. Yeah.
So
good Italian place.
There we go.
Yeah. late at night.
Philly
It rocks.
to soak up some adult beverages,
Yeah,
absolutely. Philly fanatic or gritty?
Fanatic.
Okay, there we go.
It's the best one in pro sports.
Ugga or the Philly fanatic?
Ugga.
There we go. That's
By
the right
far.
answer.
Sonny Seiler, who, as we know, passed not too long ago, and Sonny actually swam at Georgia. It was not a really well-known fact, as he said, until after his freshman year, he went to Legion Pool, and he found out there were a lot more girls at Legion Pool than there were at Stegman, and then he retired from the swim team. So, but he sat on the board for a long, long time with Coach Dooley, and he had a profound effect on us getting the pool that we are in now.
Michael Phelps or Jay Litherland?
Jay Bird.
There we go.
I love Michael, but Jay's our own. He went to Chattahoochee High School here. He was a character. These guys all know him well. They're teammates. And when he silver medaled, the best thing, maybe the greatest race in our history, was in Tokyo. And I was sitting there next to, I remember I had about a 6-hour blackout after this, but our two Georgia guys, gold medal, silver medal. The best thing, and that just does not happen. Matter of fact, that was so cool. Yeah. That was the impetus for retirement. I came back and said, that's not happening again.
Last question. Allison Schmidt or Schmitty or Katie Ledecky?
Schmitty. She's so special.
I handed those to
10
you.
medals for the University of Georgia. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, now I think we'd love some audience participation here. So we've got questions. We've got a few minutes for questions. I think we have Trustee Christine here on the mic. So I would encourage anyone and everyone to please ask questions of this Georgia legend.
None from you guys.
Hey, Coach. Jennifer, you were here. First, I want to say thank you. I was actually a lifeguard at Ramsey, and for those who don't know, they are required to have a lifeguard at the swim team practices, including those at 5 in the morning. So I was one of those lifeguards, and Coach was always appreciative and gracious to us for being there. You can imagine how irrelevant you feel lifeguarding for the UGA swim team. And then second, if they had time, he would always have them change the lane lines, which again, so appreciated. But my question is, with swimming, you talk about grinding and hard work week after week, year after year. And then when it comes time to, measure success or failure, you're within fractions of a second. What is it when you have a swimmer, what is it that you say or encourage when you have a swimmer that, doesn't hit a time, doesn't win a race? What is your advice or guidance to them to help encourage or motivate them to move
It depends on
forward?
how they got there. If they worked really hard, then you have a lot of good words to say. And if they didn't work as hard as they needed to, then there's no excuse. But I think there's times where you're going to be able to do everything you possibly can, and it doesn't work out correctly. And then you just have to sit down and just make sure they trust you, and that it's going to come out in the wash. And it always does. It's amazing. I love our sport because in the end, it always rewards those who work. And it's a tough sport, but it's a great teacher. We have a couple of things. The trust value is everything in our sport. And I remember these guys are very well aware of it. We had a young lady named Shannon Vreeland that swam for us. What years were you guarding?
I was 2013 to 2017.
All right, she was there when you were there. She gold medaled in 2012 in London, and then she had a full scholarship also to law school. She's a lawyer here in town now, at a big firm. And so anyhow, but she went a full ride for law school at Vanderbilt too. But I'll never forget the practice. She was swimming, and she was almost afraid to beat a couple that were going to make the Olympic team. She didn't think she was that good. And I remember it was on a Saturday morning, and I let the team leave, and I just told her to sit tight. And then I told her, I said, well, you're as good as anybody in the pool right now, and you're afraid to put your hand on the wall. So it is time. And I just said, there's only certain times you can do this. You just say, you can make an Olympic team. And I said, and we wouldn't be talking unless I believed it. So stop being second fiddle. And after that, she got on her horse. Next thing you know, she went to the Olympic Games. She made it. And then she gold medaled. She got her spot in the prelims. And then they said she was on a world record relay that got a gold medal. But better yet, she just, you have to, there are times with certain athletes where you have to have them by themselves and you have to make sure they know what they're capable of. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks for changing all lane lines, too. Good. Looks like we got it covered.
Hey, Coach.
Yes, sir.
One over here, Coach.
Okay. Alex.
Sorry.
Okay, this is not fair. Is this your father's question or yours?
He would like this one. This one's more for Coach McGill, though. It's kind of a
Okay.
layup for you. What's your all-time record against the enemy, Georgia Tech?
Undefeated. Yeah. I've never lost to Tech. This is Alex Hill. His father sat on the athletic board with Coach Dooley, his right-hand man, for about 30-plus years. And his father didn't care about one thing about the Olympics outside of me beating Tech. But as a swimmer and a coach, I never lost to him. Yeah.
You love your job, why retire?
It was just time. I felt one of it was what I alluded to when I came back from Tokyo. I just saw, I think something happened there that would never happen again. And I just didn't want, and also it was just time. I had two in the wings that were perfect for the job, and they deserved the start. And I think it was just, as you saw Saban leave, and there are a lot of coaches, even football coaches going to the pros. It's changing a little bit, and it's just a different type of coaching, and I think you should always stop when you feel great about the way everything was going. And I didn't want to last too long, but we had two people in the wings that I thought were as good or better, and so it was time for them. And I wanted more time with my wife and family. Yeah, that's a big deal because it takes you a while. Those little trips to those soirees for the Olympic Games literally take you away for virtually 2 months every summer, and that's not including World Championships, World University Games. It was tough. So it's nice being home. I think we did it.
Oh, one more right here.
So you and I spoke a little bit before. I swam at another university.
Yeah, Georgia Southern, right? Yep. I knew your coach.
It's interesting. I can relate because it's grind for sure.
Mhm.
But one thing is probably your earlier years before Georgia's program become very dominant. It seems like when you have a dominant team, no matter what sport it is, everybody buys in. But when it's not, the culture is hard to create. So
Mhm.
as a leader, what do you do, or how do you cultivate where you've got some people that they're just going to get after it, and others just don't. But you got to figure out how to bring those people along. I mean, it's easy to go, hey, when you're winning, you're
Yeah.
going to choose all A players because they all want to work together.
Well, you trust your real good kids too. It's really important to have some of your best swimmers be great people. Yeah, when you have good leaders, and these guys will all attest to it, and I think that always helps. So you just have to always make sure that they know you value character as much as anything else. And I think all the athletes need to know that they have an important place. We have here, sitting here today, at least one or two walk-ons maybe that came, and they had a huge, huge impact on our team. And so I think if anything else, and I think our swimmers will attest to it, that everyone had an important place. And I think that's really what you have to preach. And they have a role to play, an important role to play. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll also say my wife went to Florida State. Before we got married, she kept going, you got to come to FSU, come to a game. And I'm like, the deal is I'll go there if you come to a game at Georgia. Because I kept telling her Athens,
Mm-hmm.
just this magical place, right? So that's what happened. We lost a game. And she came and she goes, this place is ridiculously amazing. We lost, so.
Yeah, it's the best. Nothing like it. Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question, so don't hold back. We can fight over who gets to ask the last question.
So I think we're good. Any?
We got one more?
Yeah.
There we go. Right there.
I can shout it out.
Okay.
You've seen the University of Georgia over a long period of time, over a decade.
Yeah.
What do you hope never changes about UGA?
Well, I don't know, the feeling, I've already done a good job with North Campus. I mean, even where the Terry College is, they assimilated everything into the architecture that was already there. I think our school is the prettiest, it's the most beautiful in the country. So I think maybe keeping the integrity of the campus is important. But also, right now, I mean, our school, is off the map academically. As we all know, we will have stories about kids that have high SATs and 4.0s that don't get in. So things, and I hope that keeps progressing. But I think I just like the feel of the place itself. It's I can say this, and I totally respect some of the great schools, Stanford being one, but when we recruited them, it was very difficult to get anybody. And the only thing I would say, and this, we had 5 people sign with Georgia who came down with us and Stanford only. And the reason we lost to every one of them before, and I finally changed my tack. I said, well, this is what you're going to see. When you get on campus, see how you feel, all right? See how people talk with you as opposed, and then I said, you'll be 10 minutes on that other campus, and then you'll know if you want to come to Georgia or not. That was the only way to get them, because the other place had everything that they had 2 pools the size of ours, and not a bad education. And so sometimes, but I just love the integrity of our campus, and there's a gift there. If you ever get a chance to see the special collection library, that will attach you to the University of Georgia even more if you ever take a trip up there. It's well worthwhile. It makes you fall in love with the place even more. It's really a special trip, and you can go in there at any time. It's pretty cool.
Well, Coach, you've said it all. We thank you. I think I
Thanks.
speak on behalf of everyone here. Thank you for spending the time. Leanne, thank you for making the trip with us. And thank you. And Scotto, I'll turn it over to you.
Yep. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, Coach. Thank you, Nick. It is our tradition here at Terry Third Thursday to present a keepsake to all of our Third Thursday speakers. So, Coach, we would like to give you this special keepsake for your home office. Yeah, thank you. So that concludes this morning's program. I hope to see